there's no luck involved in anything as far as I'm concerned. If you want something, go out and work for it and get it. Sort of that put up or shut up. And at times I find myself thinking, oh geez, this isn't going the way I want, or that's not going the way I want. Well, I just sort of take a step back and reassess and go, what do I need to change to make that happen?
Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Push Podcast. This is the podcast where we explore the real stories behind what makes entrepreneurs and business owners the successes they are today. I am Jack Ferguson, a small business growth strategist, and I will be your host. I believe the best way to learn and be inspired is to listen to the experiences and stories of those you respect. Their real experiences, their real story, warts and all. Honest storytelling is what this is all about. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast, and don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you are listening to this. Hello, it's good to have your company today. Today I'm speaking to Dan Scougall, who owns Next Level Taxation, an accounting firm north of Brisbane. Dan is a registered tax agent and self-managed superfund auditor who specialises in small business and self-managed superannuation. He also operates a small cattle farm with his parents and has an avid interest in property development. So what was unique about Dan's story that we cover today is that he has spent most of his career as a business owner, and he owned his first business at the age of 22. He shares the challenges and highs that came from that and how such an opportunity arose in the first place. One of those challenges was having to manage people much older than he was. As you got an idea at the start of the podcast, he dislikes the word luck and takes us through his philosophy on how you actually get ahead and what has frustrated him when people assume he has gotten lucky. A few parts of this episode get quite raw. Dan talks us through watching his parents go through hardships with their business when he was growing up, dealing with burnout and what that looks like, how he made the decision to sell his first business, and how important he believes it is to walk a mile in someone else's shoes before passing judgment. Dan is exactly what this podcast is about, gritty stories of resilience and perseverance when faced with difficult situations. I'm grateful for how open he was about his journey. Let's meet him now. Hey Dan, how you doing today?
Yeah, good thanks, Jack. How you going, mate?
Good, thanks. Good to have you here. Excited to listen to your story. But reading through your notes, what's interesting about your story is you've spent most of your career as a business owner, very little of your time as an employee.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, only a small amount in the early days.
Yeah. Can you tell us about the ratio? Like how many years was it business owner versus employee?
In the accounting role, it's been 13 years. That's 13 in the first one. So we've sort of done 13 overall out of 17 years. So 13 as an owner out of 17 just in accounting. Plus in other roles before that, in the plastering was a couple of years, and then in the early kid days as a car washer was about that sort of year sort of mark. I probably only did a year and a half in retail.
Okay. So we're looking at maybe 13 years as an owner and about four-ish as a employee since being an adult, if I'm reading that correctly.
Pretty much, yeah, around that sort of mark, yeah.
Right. So were you always going to be a business owner, do you think? When you were young growing up, was this always the plan?
Yeah, we sort of, my brothers and I grew up in a small business family. So the parents were running interstate trucks, dad was a plasterer, running his own business. So we've always been around it. And I realised sort of in those early days, especially working in retail, nothing against people who want to work in a retail job, but it's very limiting. There's only so much they could do. Managers can only earn so much. So I always had that control thing where I wanted to lead myself and make my own decisions. And, in order to get where I wanted and to have things that I would have liked to have had, I had to make that decision to do my own thing. Having said that, I don't think I could go back to being an employee at any stage now. Okay. It'd be unhirable.
Amen to that. But okay, when did that happen? When did you become someone who couldn't go back?
Probably when I was 22 is when I started as a partner in the accounting firm I was in. My boss then at the time and my mentor sort of led me into a position where I was earning good money, but I couldn't progress any further. I was at the limit for what someone with my 2.5-3 years experience could earn. So I sort of said, mate, I want to go to KPMG or I want to become a partner, and that was mentioned when I started here. So we bought another practice in my hometown of Caboolture, and I started there at 22 as a partner and running that office.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That's
so after a couple of years of that, I think that's the point in time when I realised I couldn't go back to being an employee. Yep.
Right. I want to talk a lot about that part, but before we do that, I just want to touch on, so watching your parents build a business, run a business as you grew up, yes, you'd see all the good things about that, but you'd also see the things that weren't so good, I assume.
Big time, yeah. So in one of their businesses, they had a couple of drivers. They were running interstate trucks as well as running an actual plastering front, a shop, and their drivers rolled both their trucks within a couple of months of each other, which almost put them to the wall. So that was interesting. Growing up as a kid, it was tough during those times. However, my mum and dad worked very hard to not go bankrupt. They refused to. Worked through that, and then Dad went back on the tools as a plasterer and has built himself up. Himself and my mum have built it up together, and they're quite well off now from the hard work. So, we've always been brought up with that work ethic. It's easy to sort of say you got to work smart, not hard. When you get to a point in your business, you can do that, but at the start, you got to work like crazy. Hard work pays off, and if you're willing to put it in and have the dedication, it shows for itself. Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure a lot of people listening are going to be wondering, so your parents, 2 trucks rolled over or had accidents or whatever, and that's enough to nearly bankrupt the business? Yeah,
when you're running semis, and this is in the early 90s.
Right.
And you're running interstate, margins are tight, the cost of semis haven't changed. They're quite dear to have, your trucks and trailers and all your overheads of keeping the thing running. So they run on tight enough margins, and when something like that happens and you're already on the, running on empty sort of thing, it's pretty difficult.
Wow. And can you remember what that time was like for your parents? Do you remember how stressed they were, or?
Yeah, they were big time. Dad was working big hours. There's not much of my childhood. I spent a lot of my time when I was young in the cab of a truck with him, sleeping actually in the suitcase area. I used to call it my bed when I was a child, apparently. So I did a lot of trips, all around the country with him during those times. I remember the tough times and the amount of work they had to do. So my mum raised the 3 of us, would run the plaster shop on the weekends while Dad was away hands-on plastering, and they still had the trucks going. And then after that, he was still working 7 days a week plastering for as long as I could remember.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was definitely a tough gig. Different strokes for different folks. Some people would fold it in and walk away. The generation that I'm from, I suppose, would mainly do that. But
is that my generation too? I think. So
that's
we're
right.
Millennials.
Yeah. So it's sort of the way of the world now, where it's easy to crumble. But it's the whole. It's not about how hard you get, how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and sort of get back up again. So, interesting.
But it didn't deter you from wanting to run your own business, seeing all that?
No, not at all. Not every business works, and some things aren't going to be around forever. Their plastering business, for example, that showed me that with hard work you can have good things that other people don't have. We in the older years, we did a lot of things a lot of people probably wouldn't be able to afford to do, but once again, that was off the backs of their hard work. So, I learned from an early age that if you want things and you want to experience things that other people can't, you have to work for it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what sort of led me down that road. Plus, I don't enjoy being told what to do, and I like running things myself, so it works out pretty good. And that's probably why I get along with a lot of the small business clients so much, because I understand what they want as well. It's the same thing I'm striving for.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So, when you turn 22, you buy into an accounting firm. That people are going to listen to that and think that's so young to do that.
Yeah, it was difficult. Like, I hadn't finished my CPA. That was one of the most difficult things. So I'd finished uni, but I was still going through my CPA segments. I had to get... CPA told me I couldn't be a shareholder because I wasn't a CPA yet, and I wasn't a public practice certificate holder. So at that point in time, I said I'll become a IPA, I think it was back then, which is a lot easier to obtain. And they said, that's fine, as soon as you do that, we're cancelling what you've done for CPA. And I said, well, you need to do something because I already own shares in the business. So I got a sort of like a exemption from them. I kept going. I got it as quickly as I could, and it was okay, but that was a bit of an issue at the start. It was definitely difficult starting at that age with the staff members that we had. I was 22 when we bought. A few months later, I turned 23. So I had mostly women. There was about 4 women in the office who were, a fair bit older than I was. So they didn't like a young bloke coming in telling them what to do. So that was difficult. Plus, they were very resistant to change as well. Just in general, the clients too found it difficult to want to take advice from somebody at the age of 22. However, I did have my business partner who, whilst he wasn't at the office every day with me, he would come in once or twice a week just to step us through. And that did help, but I had to, you talk about getting thrown in the deep end. That's what this was, and it was 7 days a week at the start. I'll tell you right now, that was an early age to start, and I had to learn a lot of things quickly. And so I worked harder to make sure I could get those things sorted, and I did learn what I need to, and I did have the right support through my mentor. So it worked out well, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for those next 7 years either, really. Yeah.
And did it ever occur to you that you couldn't do it? A lot of people at that age would look at something like that and go, I'm just not ready. I don't want to do it. I want to party. I want to do whatever. Yep. Did that cross your mind?
Being mid-30s now, I look back and go, I did sacrifice a lot of my 20s to do that. But no, especially I don't like being told that I can't do something. It's more of a motivation. I think being told that you can't do something or that you shouldn't be doing it really gets the blood flowing, and you're either going to succeed in what you're doing, or you're going to go, maybe everybody's right. But I think if you told me I couldn't win Wimbledon, I have no interest in tennis, but I'd go there and try and win just for the sake of saying that I could. Yeah. Obviously I couldn't, but that's sort of how I think. I'd just like to go and get things done. Yeah.
So the best thing someone could do for you is tell you can't do something that you really want.
I don't even need to want it.
Right. Okay. Awesome. So tell us about talking, managing these people that are much older than you. You come in. How did you approach that? Because I'm picturing that and I'm thinking, yes, that would be very difficult. And I'm imagining I'm early 30s now, and if I had a 21-year-old come in to something, and I'm not sure how old they were, but come in and try and tell me this is how it is, I might not appreciate that too much.
Yep. Oh, big time. I'd be the same now. Although I look at it, with a different in a different light, I suppose, having been there, but. The biggest thing was they'd worked for an older practitioner who was very set in his ways. They still had the old school computer monitors, the big deep ones that hurt your eyes, on a little tiny desk that should have been put in the tip 10 years ago. So we sort of we did all the things that were flash, and that's when the dual screens were coming in, and new desks, and it made it a pleasant sort of environment. However, accountants are historically set in their ways, are very habitual in their approach, so they didn't quite enjoy that. We changed systems as well. We went paperless. I don't know how many weekends I spent going through a room the size of where you're recording here, and just scanning non-stop.
Wow.
We made another office out of that room. He had storage rooms downstairs, so it was just a traditional practice. There was nothing wrong with it, but we changed a lot of things. So I had to be very tactful with the staff at the time. Over time, they ended up moving on. That's a progression. That happens quite a lot in these things, and I tended to find that we had younger staff working for us after that. that seemed to be
the way to
demographic
go
for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And for reference, this room is probably about, I'm going to guess, 5 meters by 2.5 meters, if anyone's listening in and wondering how big the room is. So quite a lot of paperwork to scan through.
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so are you almost saying that you couldn't quite get them there? They just weren't, it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, it's that whole lift or leave. People are either going to lift or they're going to go. So in their case, they stayed for a while. They were happy, but they ended up moving on. One started her own practice, which is fine. The other one of the other girls there, I believe she had a couple of kids she had to look after and wanted to spend more time. So it wasn't that they were leaving solely because of this, but yeah, it was very hard to keep them there for as long as they were. Yeah, very difficult, and difficult reception staff were the most difficult ones to keep on. When I was, in those younger years starting, they didn't want to listen to anything I had to say at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Do you remember any specific strategies or tactics you had to employ to get things done the way you needed them done?
Trying to approach them in a way that I think that they would like. I always try and put myself in other people's shoes, but sometimes things have to be done. So, you can tiptoe around things to an extent, and after that, it's a case of, hey, listen, if you can't do it, I'm going to have to get someone who can. If you don't like working for me, that's fine. But I'm here. I'm trying to do everything to make your life better. Mm-hmm. Let's work together. Let's help the clients. Let's move forward. But yeah, it doesn't always work that way.
Right.
Yeah. And
you had the confidence at such a young age to lay the law down like that?
That's a growth factor, I think. That doesn't happen straight away. So, you have to have a couple of... I avoid confrontations generally, but mm-hmm. you have to have a couple to, get used to those conversations. They're unpleasant, I don't like dealing with those, but
yes,
over time it definitely it got a bit easier.
Right. Okay.
But no, the confidence wasn't there straight away to do those sorts of things. It took some time, and then it's the whole, coming from a motorsport background, I refer to it as bum in seat. The more times your bum's in the seat, the better you get at driving. It's the same in these scenarios. More bum in seat time,
mm-hmm.
the better you're going to get. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Cool. And you ran this place for 10 years.
The one office, yeah. So when I started, we had 3 offices. At that stage, we had 2 up the coast, and we had the one I'd started here. I was only a minority shareholder at that stage. Then we brought in another partner and bought another office in Brisbane. So we eventually had an equal split, three partners, 3 offices, 20-something odd staff, and a financial planning firm that we'd set up as well, mm-hmm. Off to the side. So it was a good sized practice, and they were a good, I had great partners and a great team. Yeah.
Right. And during that 10 years, what was that like? If you look back on it, how would you sum it up? Did you ever want to give up? Were you flying most of the time? Like, what was if you look back now, how would you describe those 10 years in business from 22 to 32?
Yeah, well, the first 8 years were great. Mm-hmm. I really had a big passion for it. After that, you have other things start up in your life. I had my first child and things like that. So the last 2 years weren't as good. I was I love seeing the clients, I love seeing the staff, I love the team there, but I'd sort of burnt myself out, I suppose, at that stage, and was looking for a break. So I pursued another 2 years, and then after that I decided I needed a bit of time away.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're clearly a hard worker, so when you say burnt out, what's the difference between that and just working hard?
Yeah, well, I suppose if you're doing something, taking a perpetual approach to it, so it's easy to do a week of hard work and then 2 weeks of sort of relaxed, sort of ad hoc at your own pace.
Sure.
If you're going full throttle all the time, mm-hmm. it catches up on you.
Yes.
Especially, at that stage in my career, I was also, we just bought a 1,200 acre farm. I was racing speedway. I had my firstborn. We were renovating our house. we had the office, there was a lot going on.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And something had to give. Luckily, I suppose I put myself in a position where I could make that decision at that stage. So, we thought, we'll try for another year or two, and then I just had enough, and it worked in well because there was other people in the business who could buy in as well, people who were underneath me working, who were very good at what they did. So it worked out well, and the partners could sort of get other people in there to take it over without too much of an upset. So yeah.
Okay. And what did it look like to you when you started burning out? What were you noticing?
I suppose it's different for everybody. In accounting, there's 3 Ds that they talk about that accountants usually go down for. Drugs, divorce, and development of property. Usually, I think the drugs, and probably alcohol, and that is more of a depression sort of thing. So I think depression is probably the 4th D, unless you wanted to combine them. But you start to burning out. You notice that you're quite anxious about a lot of things. You're sort of to a point of being over it a little bit. Depression's not something I'd never really even thought about. I just sort of kept working, but when that sort of stuff takes hold, it's hard to shake. I never thought it was a real thing until I went through a little bit of that stuff. You work through it eventually, but you got to talk to people about it. Being in business is very lonely at times. So a lot of my friends are business owners as well, because we understand. Male friends of mine, we talk about these things openly just so we do have an outlet. I think that's quite important. What does it look like? It's a myriad of things. It's different for everybody, but for me, I was overwhelmed, basically.
Right.
Yeah, overwhelmed, and it sort of led to being anxious a lot and getting a bit depressed. So, you're to a point where it's like, you feel like there's nobody there who can understand your situation. Your spouse won't. They don't understand what you do for a living. You can't talk to your clients about it. You don't want to show that sort of lack of confidence. So it's a tough one. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So it was just almost a gradual thing too. It didn't. It was not like you woke up one day and just thought, "Oh, I'm over this." It was a gradual thing.
Yeah, but not as gradual as you'd imagine. It was
Right.
sort of in the last few months there. I had a few things happen, and I said to my wife one day before I went to work, you know what? I think I've had enough. It was sort of like it'd been building up, and then it was just like, that's it. I need to tell her where I'm at and what I'm planning on doing, and then we sort of just worked it out from there. But it wasn't an easy process. Yeah.
And did it take 2 years from that conversation?
Before I tried to push through the feelings I was having about work and the anxiety and things. I spent a lot of my days worrying about things that weren't ever going to happen.
Okay.
So, in any business, anything can happen in life. There's certain things you can't control. As someone who loves being in control, and I truly do have my clients' best interests at heart, and I worry about what happens if we made a mistake here, and then how would that affect them, and then their kids going to school, and there's just, it just on flows, and it gets to a point of you start putting yourself into a circle in your mind that you're never going to get out of. And at that point I thought, you know what, I'm good at what I do. I've done well with what I'm doing. I just need a break for a while. So that was the turning point when I started, as one of my accountant friends called it, quantum accounting. He said, you're making up, looking for answers for questions that don't exist. And he said at that stage, you probably need a break.
Might indicate something else is off.
Yes. Yeah. But I think in business, what I did find is if you had an outlet outside of your work, it was good. For me, it was my racing. At the point in time when I started to feel a bit off, I'd stopped to build another car, and I wasn't actually having that high adrenaline. I can get out of work and have my bit of fun release. So I think having a constant exercise or some sort of hobby is very important, and keeping that, not stopping. Yeah,
for sure. And this is what a lot of business owners have really had difficulty with during COVID as well, is because there is uncertainties with owning the business, that you look for certainty in your personal life, perhaps with the exercise and with with all the things that you want to do.
Yep.
And yeah, then COVID chucks all this uncertainty into your personal life and into your business as well.
Yep.
And that's been really, I've seen a lot of business owners really struggle with that too.
Yeah, it'd definitely be a tough time. There's certain industries I wouldn't want to be in. I don't envy them at all.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, without that routine of having, that external outlet, they're going to be in a tough space.
Yes.
And the extra, pressure on top of having the business not going well.
Yep. Because
of, once again, something you can't control.
Yep. And we lock down, and you've got to homeschool your kids at the same time, and
yep.
It's just it's a hell of a time for a lot of people, unfortunately.
Yes, yeah, very, very terrible. Yeah.
But if you were to go back and tell yourself something, let's say 8 years into your business, like what would you say? Would you say sell earlier? Like, would you do anything differently looking back?
I quite often think I wouldn't have business partners again.
Okay.
But that wasn't an issue at all. I only think that because I thought, well, maybe I could have done things my way a bit earlier from the start, but they were actually good in keeping me in check in those years rather than letting me go as fast as I wanted. So I probably would have burnt out quicker had I not had business partners that were good. If I could go back in time, I'd probably tell myself in those 7 or 8 years in, just relax, and this isn't, nobody's ever died from not getting their tax done on time.
Yeah.
It's not, you're not saving lives, you're doing tax returns, mate. Just relax. You're in a good space. You've worked hard for it. Just sort of keep going from there. But then again, I'm quite happy I had a break. It gave me time to spend with my young son and my 1-year-old son now as well, as I got a 5 and a 1-year-old. But it gave me time with them and with my wife and time around the house and to do things that I wanted to do. When you're working all the time, quite often a lot of things you put on the back burner, or you'll engage other people to do those jobs for you.
Yep.
So there's certain things I enjoyed doing that I could get back and servicing my own vehicles and things I enjoy. So it was good from that perspective. But yeah, I'd probably just tell myself to relax a bit. I think sometimes when you're stuck in a rut, or you're just looking one-dimensionally at things, you just sort of need that external look. It's like taking a holiday, everyone feels recharged if they get a long enough holiday. I think you just got to keep things in check.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And before we move on, I suppose my last question is, the decision to actually sell, can be quite a difficult decision for a lot of people. It can be emotional. It can be all this type of stuff. How difficult was it to actually make the decision? I'm gonna part ways with my baby. I know you've got real babies, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Metaphorically speaking, people get quite attached to their business.
Yeah, I spoke to a few people before I brought it up with the business partners, and I remember sending the email that I sent them, and then speaking to them after. I was hovering over it before I clicked send for a while, just because I was a bit uneasy about it. I enjoyed working with them. I had no qualms with anybody. It was just I needed a break. I've got the passion again now, but at that stage I'd sort of just worked myself a bit too hard. So the clients was the other thing. I had great relationships with my clients. It's sort of like breaking up with a girlfriend or something, from many years ago, sort of like that feeling. So it wasn't very nice from that regard. But I do remember sending it and thinking, this is not great. But I was at that stage, I had to concern myself with where I needed to be in my family. So it was easy overall, but there was a lot going on in the background. I still look back now and think, maybe I should have just stayed in the role I was doing. However, everything happens for a reason, and it sort of opened up other doors and segues into doing things how I'd like, and on a smaller scale too. So, I'll digress, but being back on the tools as such now and actually doing the work is something I missed. When we were larger, it was basically seeing clients and doing the hardest of the hard jobs, whereas now I can actually sit down and I enjoy talking to the clients again whilst doing their work and finding those little bits and pieces in their work that I wouldn't have had time for before. So I can sort of give more of a one-on-one now, and I can actually be doing the work myself, which is great. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yes, it was a difficult decision though.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that when I was reading through your notes is that you typically, I'm not sure if this happens typically, but you have to sign that you're not going to compete for 3 years afterwards. Is that how it works when you sell an accounting firm?
Yeah,
typically?
Each one's different.
Yeah.
So we've seen it enough over the years to know if business partnerships go bad, not just in accounting but anywhere, you should have a shareholders agreement first and foremost. So being that we wanted to practice what we preach, we had a shareholders agreement. It was all very seamless. So it basically said if you leave, you'll have a 3-year restraint. We set the kilometres. I at that stage offered the partners a 5-year restraint. I had no intention of going back at that stage. Obviously, 3 years on, and I have, but we're not really a threat to their client base. We will obtain some clients and have, because friends and family of mine were there from when I was working, and they like dealing with me because they see me outside of work. But we're not actively targeting their clients or anything. They've been good to me the whole way through. I did a bit of self-managed superfund auditing, which they okayed during that period because it wasn't in competition with them. So yeah, it is common practice. The terms differ, the kilometres differ, but we'd already had that all ready to go if anything ever happened. So when I made the decision, it was quite easy. We had who was going to do the valuation, how the terms were going to be set, all very simple. And they were very good to me, which is why I still talk to them. And I'm not actively out to take any clients from them or do anything that you hear about sometimes. It's just a case of I've opened another business, some clients will come across, and the rest I don't need to pursue them. So it's worked out well. Definitely shareholders agreement was a great idea. It made it easier for me and easier for them too, but you become, you're not just business partners at that stage, you're friends. So you're working through things and making sure everybody's looked after. Yeah.
And when you say kilometres, do you mean like you can't? What do you mean by kilometres? Like, what's the restriction on that?
So we sort of based ours off an office location. And a radius out from there. So 50 kilometre circle essentially from said office that you wouldn't be able to operate another accounting firm doing similar things.
All right. So you wouldn't be able to have an office in that 50 kilometre radius? Like or would clients from that area be off limits?
You couldn't be working out of there. I think if you went and set up in Townsville and then those clients came up to see you, I never got into that. I never asked a lawyer about any of that stuff. It was of zero interest, but I believe it was just the office location. So if I was setting up in Perth, I'm obviously not a direct competitor. So at that stage, they wouldn't be too fussed. But if I'd set up, you hear it all the time where businesses don't have proper legal contracts drawn up. They sell, and then they set up
something the next day.
And take half the clients.
Take half the
which is, it blows my mind why you'd buy that business, because there is no goodwill unless you have a proper contract drawn up.
So when you had the 3 years in place, was it the day the 3 years was up you started again, or like how close to it were you? Did you just decide to get back into it?
Yeah, well, it was 2 years in. I was doing some self-managed superfund audits for other accountants and sort of seeing how they were operating. I'd been working on the farm before that a bit too, and I decided, I think the superfund auditing is not something I really enjoy. I've never enjoyed auditing. I'm a registered auditor, but I thought, this isn't really for me. I still do some now, but only for people I really like, other accounting firm operators. I don't enjoy it. It's very risky. You're at the end of the line. You're the first one someone's going to blame if something's not right, regardless of whether you did it or not. So I thought, I can go out and do accounting again. I'm sort of feeling like I'd like to do that again. My youngest brother, I'm the oldest of three. He's half done an accounting degree, and I thought, he should probably come and work for me. Then I can train him up, and eventually he could come in, or he could take over in the long term. So how close was it? It would have been the next day after the 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Had I had my office ready, but it was a month after. So,
right.
Yeah.
But pretty close, considering you thought I'm never going to go back to this again.
Yeah, and it was only in the last 8 months of that 3 year restraint that I changed my mind.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what did you do in that 3 year period, though?
Yeah, well, I had a bit of time. I never had heaps of time off. We owned that farm just north of Gayndah with my parents on 1,200 acres. So a lot of work up there, fencing. We got cattle up there. We're actually harvesting grass trees at that time as well. We got a license to take them off the property. There's about 108,000 estimated up there when the ecologists came through. So we did that for a while. I did the audits for a while. It was pretty much just the farm time. The farm time was good because it was different work. Much like when I was plastering, when you're building a house and you're framing and then you sheet it with plaster, it's starting to take form. The bedrooms look real. You can see what you've done.
Yep.
When you're doing accounting, you give me paper or you email me something, I send it back. You first of all, you don't know if I've done a good, bad or indifferent job because you don't know what accountants are doing for you. Basically, they're just sending it back to you. I know I've done a great job, but you wouldn't know if I've done a better job than the bloke at, H&R Block down the road. So there's not the same feeling as when you've actually built something or when you've put, 3 kilometres of fence over a ridge line and you think, wow, that looks really good. I've done a great job on that. So the feeling of a tangible result was really nice. I sort of miss that. So I do get up to the farm a bit more now that I'm working again, so I can keep everything. I can sort of have the best of both worlds there.
Right.
I was up on the weekend. We were doing some immunisation shots on the cattle, so that was nice. So mustering the cattle into the yards and things, and then back on the accounting tools on Monday. Yeah,
You're certainly not your average accountant.
no, it's probably I think it's why we get along with a lot of clients, and I had no trouble ever bringing clients in. I'm not going to BS them. I'm going to tell them in plain terms how things are. I'll take the time to explain it, but especially with tradies and farmers and stuff, I understand. I've been on site, I own a farm, I know where they're coming from, so it makes it a bit easier in that regard. And I'm sort of real, I suppose, for them as opposed to what they thought an accountant might be like. So
right.
It's good. I don't want to be a normal accountant, that's for sure.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't play golf. I don't drink wine. I don't play chess. It's
don't wear suits.
I don't usually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually we just sort of wear a polo. People, most of the clients, especially tradies, are more comfortable with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
It's a bit of overkill with the shirt and tie. So we do when we're going out to certain networking events, but aside from that, we keep it casual. I have an office, a standalone office at my house, so it's a separate building from my house that we built. But I still wear dress pants and nice shoes. I don't wear shorts. So
right,
we keep it to a degree. Yeah, still that professionalism there. I don't think we could get away with shorts and thongs.
Right, cool. And so how long's this been? How long's Next Level been operating now?
Yeah, so this is our 3rd month. So we had our opening in June, started June. So this is our 3rd month operating.
Very fresh.
Yeah, very fresh. We didn't buy any clients. I don't ever wish to buy a client base again. So we're gonna, it's gonna be a sort of a natural growth, which means more networking, more advertising, because networking is very difficult at the moment, of course, with the topsy-turvy times we're in. So word of mouth was always good for us, but it's difficult when you haven't bought a client base initially to get that word of mouth. So it's happening. It's happening as quick as I'd like, which is good.
Yeah, right.
And it's just a case of focusing on advertising now, I suppose.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. And it's interesting with the buying a list or buying a client base. I've seen that go a couple of ways.
Yep.
That yes, it can feel like a good short-term strategy or a good long-term strategy at times, but I've seen that work okay in the short term and not work out so good in the long term, and have people wish that perhaps they hadn't bought that at the start and had grown organically-ish like you're doing.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I see I've done it both ways now. Buying fees is great. You've got the clients there initially. You're generating the income to pay off the loan for the purchase. You then have that client base to then get referrals off as you're going through and doing a good job for them, and they realise who you are and that they, if they get along with you. But then there's the flip side: if they don't like dealing with you, they don't like the change. You've paid money for fees. I mean, there's going to be certain clauses in there to get some of it back, but you just never know what's going to happen. we've done it before, and it's great. It works quite well. However, it's just not for me this time. I just prefer to build up with clients I want to deal with. They're going to refer people to me who are similar minded, so I can do sort of things in my own approach and at my own pace.
Yes.
So, I've got other things to occupy my time outside of running the practice. So there's always something to do. But this time of the year, in saying that though, we've been going 3 months, I'm still super busy. It's not all with chargeable work. A lot of it's with building the business, and we're still fixing up little idiosyncrasies in how we've actually structured the firm and programming and software and things we could be doing better. So there's always something to do in that early stage. Buying fees would have been an even bigger task. So yeah, and buying the staff and the premise, and there's a lot to it. I can definitely see it both ways. It's just this time I'm going to go at my own
this way. Yep.
Yeah, my own speed with it. Yeah.
Fair enough. And what's interesting about your story as well, and as I read through your notes, what stands out to me is you almost it seems like you really strongly dislike it when people talk about luck.
Big time.
The term seems to really bug you.
Yeah.
And I'll be interested to know if you could break that down for us, because you've obviously you've worked as an owner for 13 years now. You've built a business, you're building another one now. And do people tell you that you're lucky? Like, is that something you've heard?
Yeah, you'll get it from, it falls back into what I was saying before about it's lonely being a business owner, and sometimes it's lonely when you're going well. It's the whole tall poppy thing, I suppose, in our culture. But I've been told I'm lucky a lot. One of my wife's friends, that's probably the one I remember the most. He came around our house once and he said, you're an accountant, are you? I said, yeah. And at that stage I was building a sprint car, and they run a 410 V8 in those. I had my Valiant there with the supercharger hanging out, and I just built another shed, and there was a few things going on. He looked around a bit and he said, you're not just doing accounting though, you're dealing drugs as well, I take it. And I said, mate, no. I said, no, it's just, I own my own business, I'm working hard. And it goes, you don't make money doing accounting to be able to do this sort of stuff. He said, you got to be doing something else. I said, no, mate, you just got to work hard in what you do. And then it's the whole, geez, you're lucky to have all that stuff. And well, no, it's definitely not luck. Watching the way my parents worked and the toll my father's body's taken over the years to have what he has, and the things that I've missed out on being able to do. I couldn't go to cousins of mine's bucks parties and do the fun things because I had galas and things I had to go to, or I was trying to network and get out there. So there was lots of little things I had to do to become successful in that prior role, and there's things I have to do again now to build my practice to a level that I'll deem successful. There's no luck involved in anything as far as I'm concerned. If you want something, go out and work for it and get it. Sort of that put up or shut up. And at times I find myself thinking, oh geez, this isn't going the way I want, or that's not going the way I want. Well, I just sort of take a step back and reassess and go, what do I need to change to make that happen? It's not. I'm not saying it's possible in every business. There are roadblocks sometimes that are impenetrable because of legislative changes or something like
lockdowns,
COVID, for example.
Yeah,
exactly. So it's not always the case, but 9 times out of 10 you can work through, and you just sort of have to take that look back and go, I'm doing something wrong, I better take a better path, pick a better approach, and sort of go again.
Yeah.
And if you want something hard and hard enough and you're strong-willed, you're going to get it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about it. Like one thing I don't like hearing is when people go, we've just got to hope sort of that it works out, or cross our fingers and toes. And you hear it a little bit, I think, with all these lockdowns and stuff as well. Is I've heard people say they're hoping for this, they're hoping for that, and you kind of just got to do what you can, and some of the things that people are hoping for aren't going to happen, like New South Wales coming out of lockdown anytime soon. As we record this, it's sort of, they're in a bit of trouble. So people thinking that that's going to lift anytime soon is a bit of a fool's I don't know. hope. But yeah, I do hear that a bit. And there's this idea, just do nothing and just hope it kind of works out.
Yeah, it's not going to happen that way. Yeah, I've seen enough businesses over time to know the ones that are going to work, without doing anything. There's not many of them. Most of the time it just comes down to putting the effort in. But I definitely hate the term luck. I don't like when people put you in a different category because you've worked for something. I don't begrudge anybody who's doing better than me if they've worked harder or smarter, and they've sacrificed to be there. They deserve it. It's that simple. If you want to lounge around all day and watch telly and go on holidays and do things and put on a facade on Facebook that you're living a life that isn't a reality, you go for it. But if you want real things, you need to work for them. It's that simple.
No, it's very, very fascinating that you clearly, that was something that, and we've all got something, right, that really annoys us. And I suppose mine is very much when we talk about this, this hope or this wanting something to work out well. And a lot of my work, I see problems with the business model, and you're not going to outperform the business model. It's the model, you can only take so many clients on or take on however many things you can, and you're not going to outperform that. And if people get frustrated with me that I might have had a better year than them financially or something, but they've taken a salary that's what you're going to get paid. You agreed to that salary. What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no formula to it.
Yeah,
I mean, as an example, towards the end there, I stopped ringing the ATO to work out payment plans for clients or ask for fine remissions in the rare circumstance. I was on the phone with a woman from the ATO one day, and the client had been through a bit of a tough patch, and it's the first time they asked for a payment plan on their BAS, and they had employees. And she said, your client probably shouldn't have any employees or be running a business, and then they wouldn't have to ask for these payment plans. And I said, this is the first one they've ever asked for. It was only over 3 months. It was a very short time frame, and they came through it afterwards. But I said, she must have called me on a bad day, because I said, let me ask you a question. I said, have you ever run a business yourself? Do you understand the metrics of having your own business? And she said, no, I never have. And I said, well, listen, it's not like your job where you're going to get paid every single week, regardless of what happens in the economy or anything. I said, your paycheck is constant. These are people running a small business. They can't do that, and these people in particular had sacrificed a lot to make sure their staff were paid and things. It's not like the ones you see where you're asking for a payment plan, they've gone and bought a new ski boat or they've got a jet ski sitting there. These people were very genuine, and I conveyed that. However, it wasn't getting through. So after my comment, I realised it wasn't going anywhere, and I'd never really rang the ATO after that, because I was getting a bit too straight with them. So one of my other team members was quite good at getting the results and listening to their nonsense and just working through it. However, I'd sort of had enough of hearing somebody's thoughts when they haven't been there. Until you walk a mile in somebody's shoes, you don't really know what it's like. So that sort of falls in that same luck category for me. It's just it's I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not going to sit there and look at somebody who's doing well and say, wow, how great would it be to be you? You don't know what's going on underneath. It's a whole, sort of tip of the iceberg thing. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one thing to pass judgment and say, you probably shouldn't have done that or should have done this, as opposed to, look, this is just the rules I've got and this is what I have to go by, which I'm not sure if how you would have reacted to that. But in that situation, I would have reacted the same as you, I think, because of the judgment.
Yes.
From someone who doesn't understand and is not willing to empathise, versus I can accept a rule that you can't change because your superiors have said this is the rules and this is it. So I see a bit of a difference there. Yeah,
it's communication, isn't it? It all comes back to communication. It's no different in our game. Accountants are generally the reason we get a new client from an existing accountant is a lack of communication. It's the same in most aspects of the world, but especially in the accounting game, we accountants are bad for communicating with clients, getting back to things timely. And in fairness, it's an overwhelming time. There's no set, you can't spread your work evenly throughout the year, so accountants are bombarded at certain times of the year. And they do find it hard to get back, but we, for example, we try and get back within 24 hours because we know that's how you lose clients if you don't get back. However, so the communication thing is big in a lot of facets of the game, that's for sure.
Yeah. But I suppose accountants can also set expectations,
Yes.
That's the other thing is you take some things on and then, I've had accountants over the years where they go you ask them to do something simple, they go missing for a couple of months.
Yep.
That's at the start. If you go, cool, we'll do it. But look, we've got a lot on, and this is going to take a few months. Is a bit different to thanks, and then
100%
silence for ages, and you get to the stage where you just say, well, can you just give me an idea of when this is going to get done? But by that stage, you're starting to get pretty frustrated that there was no expectation management.
Yeah, and I mean, as you say, you could have just said up front, I've always set terms. We're going to do it in 3 to 4, 4 to 6 if we're super busy. Most of the times it's 2 to 3.
Yeah.
If you're getting towards the end of that, it's pretty easy nowadays with the technology to send an email or give them a phone call and just ask how pressing it is, if it will hurt for another week back or whatever the case may be. So, it's, as you say, expectations.
Yeah.
And keeping people informed, the communication side, it's not difficult to do. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, fascinating. And it's been awesome to hear your story, Dan. I appreciate you coming in today. We might wrap up shortly, but what are some places that people can see you? Like, how can they get in touch if they wanted to get in touch? Where should they go to learn more about that Next Level and more about yourself?
Yeah, well, we got our website, which is www.nextleveltaxation.com.au. And we're also on Facebook and LinkedIn. So most of our referrals are word of mouth. However, we are stepping up our Facebook advertising. So we offer no obligation free meetings for new business and self-managed super fund clients. So they're welcome to come in and have a chat. We can give them the basics of where they're at if they don't understand, or they can just come in and feel us out to make sure we're the right fit.
Yeah.
You got to be comfortable with who you're dealing with. So we always offer clients that opportunity before engaging with us, and they can come in and have a chat. Yeah,
of course. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Well, I hope it goes really well for you, because clearly you've got all the ethics and that are in place. From meeting you, it's clear that you really want the best for the people you work with and the people around you. So that's always nice to have in people and in businesses that you deal with. So definitely can if anyone's needing some accounting help, go towards Next Level.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jack. Yeah, and likewise to yourself, mate. It's good to speak to somebody like-minded in those particular topics and with the same views. So yeah, it's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, thanks very much for coming along, Dan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, mate. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Push Podcast. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast and clicking on the relevant episode link. Remember to subscribe, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.